Okay, so now I'm going to do a update on my status. So where things are, what I'm doing, what I haven't loaded up to GitHub yet, and where I'm at. Now, in truth, I'm, let's see. Alright, so my overall goal here, in fact, alright, so this is my solved folder. Right now it's a mix of actual patches and some things that were just files that I changed. And what I'm hoping to do is make patches out of a change I made, for the most part. That's number one. But number two, also to figure out what was a change I made that includes just adding a header, just adding a definition, or changing something as suggested on a mailing list message, for example, and having the compile succeed. And I'm also going to mention a few things that didn't work out perfectly to various degrees, and one that was a definite hack to get it to compile. Well, actually, now that I know a little bit more, or I've thought a little bit more about it, it actually is a quasi-hack. The one thing I am weak at right now is preserving the changes that other OSs have patched in. And I also hope to mention what happens when, to discuss the issue, when, if I make a change to the file for Haiku, but another operating system has already made the change for the file, and therefore already has a designated patch inside a package source, I gotta figure out what to do about that situation. Right now I'm just set to override those patches, but sometimes there's some patch clash that takes place during the situations. So anyway, just going down the list here. So for system, I kind of don't know where to put this FD bits issue thing. Basically, if you have an error that comes up during the compilation, it says don't know what to do with FDS bits or something like that. Not FDS set, but bits. What I've done in the past, and I haven't found a header that will solve this, so I've literally opened up the text file, searched and replaced FDS bits, underscore bits, with bits. Now you'd say, well, shouldn't that be able to be setted out? Well, that's true, and I haven't tried a building transform, and that would be very interesting and very exciting to get a positive result out of. Maybe I'll try one of those. I just have to remember which actual, and I may, as I look these over today, for a little while here. I'm not going to be here that long. And try it. Maybe just do a test run. Patch avoidance is always good, at least in my opinion. So then I have pthread stubs, and basically this note gives you instructions how to create this text file here and place it where it goes. So when you try to compile some of the X11 based programs, it won't complain that you don't have pthreads, the necessary pthreads, as it says, to build. This is the only thing that I have that's sitting around that's unidentified, and it's a header. It's a very truncated version of the header that Haiku uses. And of the one patch that is, I would say, somewhat of a hack, has to do with library X11, and I'm also should actually talk a little bit about some patches I made, even though the package would build, because the actual build affects other packages. And some of these packages I've come to realize they're just headers. But so this PWD, the reason why I mentioned that, I suspect that maybe I used that in some capacity to get library X11 to compile without patches. But of course, wherever that varies with what Haiku's header says, that's probably not a good thing. So this was perhaps in the past, maybe not. I don't know. It could have been used for something else. Of the archivers, these are actually the packages that I made patches for. There's 16 of them. Uploaded those. Benchmarks, there should be 6. So hopefully I've uploaded those already. Biology, I've only made 1. And a good portion of those patches had to do with adding an include statement for strings. And if during the course of this whole thing I end up doing a lot of those, it's really no sweat for me. And, you know, these patches will be out there to be able to deal with the strings issue should, you know, we want to have them available. It is somewhat counter to what I've said in the past, but I'm not staunchly for or against anything, I guess, if you want to put it that way. If you understand what I'm talking about, then you understand what I just said there. But I guess staunch is not the word. I highly favor not being 100% technically compliant with POSIX, I guess. These, of course, of course, these patches with the strings included will allow, if they're all fully dispersed and incorporated everywhere, and the issue settled, would allow the very helpful redirect that was added by Stippy to be removed at a future date. So what I'm saying is, so far my plan is to do the work to allow that to happen, at least with the packages that I attempt to build. That's only about 41% of the total, actually. Assuming I build everything I built before, because this is a new system. I'm still going to try. Okay, even though I don't like it. Call me an enabler if you want. Okay, in the comms section, I don't think I've gotten to these yet. These are basically full Confederate patches or overrides. Now, there's a few things I should talk about. And I don't want to forget to get to library X11. And I don't want to forget to talk about patch interference. So I'm going to write those things down. What's that called? Sunline issue, and whatever the heck I just... Oh, patch interference. I don't know what conjunctive actually to use there. It's just the circumstances of the matter. There's no real blame involved with or at or whatever. It just happens to be the circumstances. Okay. There's a few scattered ones here and there that I decided to go down and just patch. Getting back over here to say inverters, not yet. Development, not yet. Now there's some differences going on here. So, and I'm looking at these so I'll remember things to say. So, for example, Bison here There really isn't. Actually, I just get rid of it because there's really no patch there. Basically, I just made a note to myself that Bison, as far as I could tell, let's read my note here. I already have it saved elsewhere, so I'm not going to keep it here. Bison will compile without a patch, without anything, any issue in this GCC4 setup. But if I recall correctly, it needed a patch in the GCC2 and or hybrid setup. Not sure what that is. Now Flex here, I have a set of changes that I'm gonna make patches for, and it's very interesting. This is the grand mystery, at least to me. So, give you some background on Flex. So Flex, as far as I could tell, and I don't believe I'm using any, I don't think Diger has patches for Flex, so just checking. Don't think he does. I know it'll just build. And I'm not saying anything about from now on, I'm always talking about GC4 unless I mention GC2. Flex will just build. And in fact, I have a build of it right here. Build done. Without any intervention. It just builds. Let me just verify that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case here. Yeah, there it is. The thing is, though, is I still looked at the patches that are available from Haiku ports, and I also looked at the source code for various things that were embedded in the code that were specifically designed for BeOS. And of course, there were some patches not only at Haiku ports, but some if-defs for BeOS that I changed to Haiku, and it built when I applied both the I didn't try just the Haiku ports patches. I didn't try just the BeOS. I tried the combination of the two, built that, and I found in my last run that and I can't tell you which ones they were, that there were some packages that didn't build previously that we're able to build now. I only got to the point of deciding I was going to rebuild Flex in my last setup because I would get to the point where there would be some packages that would say I can't find Flex, and I should probably look for that. One thing I haven't done yet in this system is try to deal with the things that were real showstoppers here to see whether those circumstances have changed for whatever reason, identified or not. Whether I'll be able to identify the reason if any of those things change, I don't know. But one of the major showstoppers was there was a math program called FFTW, and or it is a math program called FFTW that will get through most of the build process, and there's a few other packages that are like this. And then I believe it's libtool is part of the build process, and it will try to create symbolic links for libraries that are already built and rename them to some deviation from the name of the original library and place it in a .lax folder, which LAX stands for, I think, libtool archive. But usually that's appended to the outside of as an extension of the file name, not a folder. But anyway, it's a .lax folder. When I go in there, those links are always broken, whether I had Flex patched or not. But one of the things that was stopping these from compiling that I actually solved was Flex, but it was by. So anyway, at the end of the day, I'm going to end up building this other variation of Flex and releasing these patches. I really don't know if it's necessary, and I don't know if there's like this weeble wobble kind of thing. It's like, well, if you have Flex built this way, these things will build. But if you have Flex built this way, the original things won't build, but these things will build. And I don't know what that means. I know Flex has something to do with the compile process. And when I was reading a little bit more details about Flex and Bison in general, I mean, really in general, on different blog pages or people, getting a little more into details about what Flex does for them, it seems like these programs are able to kind of capture strings of text and arrange them in the appropriate way, whatever that means, or whatever impact that has on in creating a binary. It's beyond my scope of knowledge or understanding. So, and then stepping back from this whole thing, if I release a set of patches, of course, chances are that most people are, if they use them, they're just, they'll download them, they'll, with Git or whatever, and they'll just start using them, and they'll use it for Flex. What I don't know is whether Flex needs those patches or not, because I don't know, and I don't know if that has any impact on some of the errors that come up. With those numbers look like phone numbers, and I re-looked in Martin Brown's book, and some of those errors were there. I re-looked, and I was trying to I looked a little closer at the code in Python, and there was a special setup file for the BeOS, and there actually are, for a number of operating systems, specific headers or other files that are compiled just for the platform. And I'm not sure whether it looks like when we build Python, at least, I'll have to actually look at what's installed. I don't know what's happening in the Haiku world, but when I've looked at the patches in the past, I don't see that those patches attempt to remake the special setup for the BeOS. At least in the ones that I've seen. I think I've looked at them all, actually. And it doesn't really create those special headers for Haiku. But it still builds. And I'm not sitting here saying that just because we didn't do that, that's the reason why, at least when I look at my results for Python 2.7.8 now, I find that there's the same modules that don't build. And whether Flex is the first thing that should be built, and should be built whatever proper way is, which is ambiguous in this case. I don't know. It could be a big mistake that I haven't built Flex in the first place, in whatever way it's supposed to be built, which I haven't discovered and don't know. A clue would be, well, if they got those changes over at Haiku ports, they're probably building Flex the way it is over Haiku ports. But I don't know how well those sort of patches will interact with the rest of the system. It'll take a while for me to find out. Which almost means, depending on how important Flex is, so number of questions I have is, number one, if Flex is built differently, but still builds, well, would I have a different set of results for all my packages? I'll call it Flex A and Flex B. Actually, Flex A is vanilla. Flex B is Haiku ports. I'm just making this up. Flex C is the BeOS. Actually, I'll change that around. Flex B is the BeOS changes only. Flex C is the Haiku ports changes only. And D would be the hybrid. Mike, the question I have in mind is, one, under all 4 scenarios, would I have 4 different compile totals? Would I have 4, for example, if I use Flex A, would I have 3,500 total builds? Flex B, would I have 4,500? With Flex C, would I have 2,000? And with Flex D, would I have 11,000? Yeah, almost all. Or is it no change at all? It doesn't matter. They're all going to be the same. That's one set of questions. Second set of questions is, between Flex A, B, C, and D, will I have binaries that can find their libraries versus not finding their libraries, and any 4 of those alternatives? I don't know, but it would take a long time to find out, I think. In an absolute fashion, maybe I could do it in some kind of sampling manner. Or maybe I could freeze this and have 4 different virtual disks sitting around and do all 4. But I got to pick one, and I don't know which one I'm going to pick. So there's a lot of unanswered questions. One, should I release patches? Or if I do release this patch, I probably should release those patches once I make them. That's clear. But where should I put them? Should I put them with my regular set? Should I put it with a special set? Somehow with a big notation, you know? And then would the patches be different with one Flex versus the other? It's hard to know. I should probably read more about Flex, but I don't think Brown goes into those details, at least in his book. He has a whole chapter on it, but he doesn't go into those type of details because it's nothing anybody ever thinks of. You get it ported and then you work with it. That's the Flex you use. Back in the day when he wrote it, it was once Flex was ported, that was the Flex you use, not, well, there's Flex A, Flex B, Flex C. You know, so when I look at this, there were more, and then the history of these of patches for BeOS. Back in the day when, you know, Martin Brown and other people were getting we're talking 1998 to 2000, when they were porting apps over to the BeOS for the first time. I know these guys are skilled and they know what they're doing. I don't want to sound negative about the people that made. I don't know anything about the people that made the patches for Haiku. They could be just as skilled and know just as much about what they're doing as the people that were porting things over to BeOS. Or they may be people that are about my skill level that, all right, I changed this and it compiled, or somewhere, but they could be somewhere in between. Meanwhile, of course, Haiku is not an exact replica of the BeOS as it was in 97. So that, going through that thought process really doesn't lead me in any direction. All I know is that all the patches that are out there allow Flex to build, and things still build with Flex, and I did have better results earlier using both the patches from Haiku ports and from the BeOS. But the obvious implication of that is that I may have had the same results or better if I didn't use any of the changes that were included with original BeOS settings changes that are in there. Clear as mud? Yeah, so it's complicated, and since it could be major, it seems a major part of the whole build system. But I just don't know enough about Flex to say, well, no, if it's built a different way, things are going to come out completely different. I'm just considering that's a possibility. All right. some of these things I've already built, so I'm going to end up tossing them, but I'm going to have to go through this stuff later. I could sit here forever. Like such as getText. For getText in my original, some of my earliest videos, I had a whole video on getText with me wrestling with it and finally getting it built, and probably, you know, configuring outside of package source and going back into package source and, you know, changing this and changing this. It just built. But it probably is, let me look, see if Deiger's patches had something to do with that. I highly suspect it did. But I don't see that he has a set of patches there. I'm just kind of wondering. Yeah. So anyway, gonna toss that anyway. I did get NASM built, and I'll do patches for that. That's in development. I don't want to get stuck too much in a mire here. Again, these are all the things that I did something for to get it to work. Some things I've got from Haiku ports. Some things I did on my own. I do have an issue figuring out what the stuff is and what the things are, basically. But okay, so let's get to specific. I got bogged down in this. Basically, right now I'm in the process of, and I remember doing a count of the total 1 point. I think it's even on camera. It was somewhere in the 90 range that I'm working on creating around 90 some odd patches. Less than 100, more than 90. 97 seems to be jumping to my mind, but it's not a solid memory. And right now, I have 25 categories in which I potentially have created patches. I really only made it through the first 3. I don't know if I've released all these from the first. I know I've released the archivers. I'm pretty sure I've released the benchmarks. I'm not sure if I've released a biology patch. So working down, it goes to chat down to X11. And you know, so until I get all these things built, a patch made and released to Git, which is the major thing I'm trying to do here, I won't have a complete set of patches up at Git. Okay. Again, these patches are add-ons. So you want to start with package source, you want to start with Deiger's patches, and then you can add mine. I'm not going to duplicate Deiger's work, of course, because Deiger's are in the work. But unless, of course, Deiger has made a set of patches for an earlier version of a package, if I update it, you know, I may just send it straight to him first and see if he uses those updates instead of putting them up in Git, because I don't want there to be confusion. I want my patches that I release to be basically additional to what Deiger has released. To fit in, I really want Deiger to take my patches and put it into his. So that way we have just one place for people to go to have a good amount of patches. Now, the nature of my patches that I'll release will be files that I was, of course, able to patch without wondering whether things worked out right. And yeah, so it's just, I add a header, suddenly the errors go away. Or I change sunland to size of, and it works. You know. Then under those circumstances, I'll put them up at GitHub. hopefully I'll take them down once Steiger takes them, but it's hard to communicate because I speak English, he speaks Russian, and we're almost regimented to talking in code, really. Now for the settings, that's going to be tough. I'm going to try to keep up. I'm going to look at his repository as frequently as I can, and if it's updated, I'm going to look to see if he's added any additional settings. I'm going to put them into mine. I'm going to try to make mine have all of Steiger's settings. And what I mean by settings are package source options and or commands that are sent to various package builds specifically that I went over in some detail in at least maybe the last or the video before that, towards the end of the video. Because sometimes the solution for building that package is actually in those, what I'm calling settings, but they are kind of, I would call them passive patches. And in a little more detail on passive patches, the reason why I like passive patches, is once they're in a setting that's outside of the code, basically this setting is able to handle the fact that the code contains something that won't allow it to build in Haiku, such that it will build, such as the math library. Perfect example. The math library is, a lot of programs will want to link to the math library at build time. Most systems have a separate math library in them, or at least Linux does. A lot of the more prominent ones that predate Haiku, when these packages were built, had something called library math, and so there's a -lm in the make file, and so if you try to build that in Haiku, the math library functions are incorporated in library root and not library math, and so the build will fail saying it can't find library math, where it shouldn't fail. If you just remove that -lm, it'll actually build. Those kinds of things are in these settings, and more of them, and of a larger variety and complexity. So sometimes that really is a patch, but the good thing about passive patching is it's from here on out, you actually, the only thing you need is the setting. So even if the version of the program is upgraded, if they're still using the math library, our setting will still take care of it, and we don't have to chase down and redo the patching process for this particular POSIX application. It's taken care of. So not only is the build process easier to start with blindly, but say a guy like me with barely any experience, chewing on some wheat and with his ears sticking up in a funny looking hat, could build it just by having a build link transfer minus lm included in his make.com file. Basically you don't have to know how to or maintain a patch or know how to patch. So patch reduction is a goal, or to get getting the information out about how to reduce patches is one of my goals. I really do hope and encourage that kind of technology will be incorporated in Haiku Porter. So there's a global setting in haikuports.conf that you can say, or actually, better than that, the Haiku Porter will just be made that if there is a math library, it'll just set it out. So there is no setting required. That would be just awesome. There may be some rare cases where that causes an issue, but I doubt it, where it actually has to have library root substituted for math. I mean, maybe if it did that automatically, that would be perfect. So it's kind of like there is no spoon. So when there is that, in the past when we dealt with the wine project, it's kind of like in a state of limbo right now. There hasn't been a resolution where, there are other things to fix to get wine to build in Haiku, but one of the issues was just the math library. And the leader of the wine project didn't want to have to comb. I don't know how big wine is and how many files are there, but he didn't want to comb all those things for the math library and put if-defs for Haiku. When to him it made sense for Haiku to make a symlink from library and call it libmath, right? The truth is that's not even an issue. Haiku doesn't need to make the symlink, and he doesn't need to worry about doing the if-defs because package source and or Haiku Porter, if modified, or I don't think it has that feature, but if it did, there wouldn't be an issue. It would build, whether the math library was if-def or not, and whether Haiku put a symlink there or not. You see what I'm trying to say? So, my hope is to get more solutions that are like that, and then it'll last. It's more of a permanent solution, and a solution that doesn't require the maintenance of patches, the storage of patches, the application of patches. Just if you take a step out, there's one less step where things can go wrong. I think I probably was clearer on that than I've ever been in the past 6 months. All right, so let's get to some patch interference with package source. Now, there were some cases, and in addition to patch interference, I'm going to talk about some builds that weren't perfect. And this has to do with my patches and how they actually be used. And even with Deiger's patches, and sorting this out and getting this to work may require that we're actually able to upstream some of these patches to package source, of which I haven't tried yet. Deiger has had some very good interactions with why does it always name Akiko Obato? He's had, I've seen a few emails between him and Akiko Obato on the package source mailing list, and Deiger has suggested some changes. Some changes have been folded in. So it's not impossible to do so. I just have to get around to actually doing this, or pointing out where my patches are, or just how involved I'd have to be, I don't know. I know I don't have commit access in the package source. At least I don't think I do. I mean, that would mean everybody in the world did, because I haven't done anything to try to get it. And I doubt that's the case. So I'm probably going to need to. And then with dealing with both these things, I do want to have my patches available so people can start working on Haiku ports as well. And in as much of any situation where I've created something new that's not already in Haiku ports, or say I have a newer version of a patch, they can add that. Hopefully and eventually, and I honestly would feel much better if I was able to do this, I'm going to want to learn how to make recipes for Haiku ports, and additionally, how to make patches and how to do a successful build and how to submit these things. So a lot of the times I'm talking about my own personal goals. Sometimes I'm talking about what I wish other parties would do, but in this case I'm talking about my own personal goals. Sometimes I'm just talking about what happens when I do things, just in case this might help someone else avoid or know what's going to happen or be able to predict what's going to happen if they decide to work in whatever environment they work with. And I'm pro having more than one tool set for Haiku. I'm not against the use of any tool set. I'm not biased towards the use of any tool set. This is just what I know how to use. Okay, so library X11 and Sunland I should get to now. So let's see if I can remember which package this was. There's a package called X11 that basically, from what I could tell by the contents of the package source package that's created, but I will actually look at it to be sure. What Xtrans seems to do is create headers and C files that are used by other programs during their builds. So going through the sequence of events of what happened to me while I did this, while I was building, and I've gotten a little bit further actually over here. And I'll talk about my state of library X11 as part of this. The first thing I built was Xtrans, and of course, since it's just making headers and C files, the build's not going to fail. Created a package, installed it. Then I went to build library ice, and then I got the Sunlen error. And it referred to the Xtrans headers and C code that were already installed and said that we have a problem here because Xtrans has some lines with Sunlen in it that hasn't been defined. And there was an email by Ingo, or some writing by Ingo, during the discussion about porting over library X11. It was a few years ago, I think, when the recipe files were first submitted for library X11. And Ingo suggested that instead of using Sunlen, use the variable size of. Now, to back up before I get into this whole story, even though things turned out okay for me for the most part, and for the most part I think my changes are okay, I do want to point out I'm not a programmer by profession. I just pretty much have some background knowledge, have some experience, 4 or 5 months of experience. I know what a header is, I know what an if-def is, I know what the compile process is, I know what a package is, I know what a variable is, but not how to make one. So when I discuss this is from my point of view. These aren't absolute, I'm not professing these things to be facts for the end of time written in stone and all that, unless I'm referring to a fact. Okay. So since live ice wasn't, getting back to my story, so live ice wasn't building, I went back into Xtrans and I rebuilt it using size of in lowercase instead of Sunlen. And maybe I'll be able to actually show that, because I did make patches for Xtrans. There's one file called xtranssoc. Here's the Sunlen. And I changed it to size of in both cases. And it, built just fine. Sunlen, size of, Sunlen. Let me look at this a little more closely. Looks like I got rid of 4 lines here. Okay, so in this case, actually, this here, where it's basically saying if you're using BSD for sockets, or you're using Unixware, use, whatever this means. Okay. But then there was a second conditional saying if you're using BSD sockets and using the Sunlen definition, not the Unixware definition, I would suppose. So to me, this seems to be either conditions apply, but both cause failures. If one condition or the other applies, both having caused compile failures for live ice, in my circumstance, It's one of the two. If it's this, use this. If it's this, use this. I wasn't able to actually solve this first case up here. I simply had to delete those lines. So actually I'm going to put a little note here. We call it patch as a hack. And that's what I mean by that. Why am I calling it a hack? Now, it may be perfectly good because this is what I'm thinking why it might be okay. Ingo has said that, for haiku purposes, Ingo has said that we use size of. We don't use line. Well, the only thing we actually would compile is this stuff here. And so my thought is, and I have a lot of doubt about this thought, is that well, since we don't use it, we don't need it. And so it's not a problem that it isn't there. Does it make it true? I don't know. Am I going to regret the fact that this function, whatever, if it is a function, this code set is not available later on? I don't know. So that's the nuances of my just blanket. This is really a tag. I don't have any content to that file. Patch as a hack. Because I don't know and I didn't know how to preserve those things. I think I could probably look up to try to find. What I'm looking for is an anti-if-def. So what I want to have, I think, is something that says, if it's not haiku, do these things. If it is haiku, use this thing down here. I haven't done that so far. I don't know if I'll be capable of doing that, even though I would like to do that. So these are the kind of things I'd want to pass on to Daiger. Hopefully he could make it better, or somebody else make it better. But this, and also something very strange. And I'll get to X11. So after that, library ice built, and then library X11 wanted to build, but it also has there's a hack. I didn't know what to do about the get gflt.c file that was in the source directory for library X11. That was the only thing that stopped it from compiling without issue, and that is version 1.6.2. And what I did is I ended up getting rid of this whole section here. There is, and what was happening on this, the reason why I mentioned the PWD header that I have labeled is unidentified as to what that was, where it came from, in my solve directory, which really actually, I probably should put that in the not solve directory, but I was hoping to get rid of it a long time ago. Anyway, is the error that was taking place is that these functions were already defined by headers that were in haiku, but the format of the code here wasn't in the same manner as it was in the header. It was saying there were too few variables, if I recall correctly. So I wish I knew more about coding that would allow me to do whatever I would need to do to basically do this line and perhaps this line so it would have enough variables. That's the task that someone with more skills than I would have, that I have, would have. And that's the task that someone with more skills that, with a more skilled person than I would have if they were to get library X11 1.62 ported over to Haiku, and that is it. So the whole Haiku sequence is deal with the Sunlin issue. So for Xtrans, probably the use of Sunlin out of there, add the size of that Haiku wants to it, and then when library X11 builds, deal with this small, maybe 10 or 15, really 2 lines of code, and expanding it in such a way that the definitions that are embedded in this one source file, literally, will change this one source file so it has the same kind of structure and variables that the pwd-.h header that Haiku's made expects for whatever these kind of things are, and it kind of looks like it's a user and a password kind of thing, but I'm just going by the by the variables there. Okay, so patch interference is a whole other subject, so I'll get to that. So there are times when I'll go in, I'll make a change, and it ends up that someone else has already made a change to that file, and the patch has already been released for package source. What I try to do, in fact, I think I've been successful so far, is not only include the changes that were made by that are included in the package source patch, but also add the Haiku parts to it. So far, I haven't run into any of those unified patches that I have doubts about my patch. So in theory, I theoretically would be able to submit this to package source. The thing is I don't know how to sign off on these patches, or what the proper, at the top there's some kind of signature, or if I'm supposed to do it, or whether I'm supposed to give it to someone else and they're supposed to do it. And parts of the patch were created by somebody else, and how does that work? Is there another line for the signature? Do I sign, what do I do? I don't know. I don't know what the role is in that circumstance. So far, so basically when it comes down to using my stuff that's up at GitHub, if you wanted to, if you see a patch that matches a patch that is already inside, that's the problem. That's already inside the package source patches folder for a package you're trying to build. What I've done over here, I don't like this. I mean, I don't like this for widespread use. Is, replace the file that's there with mine and then use it. But to use it, there's one very important thing you need to know. You have to do bmake space make patch sum. Otherwise, it just won't apply the patch if you put it in the patches folder. I'm not sure whether that'll happen if you put it in the local patches folder, but you would have to get rid of the patch that is actually in the package source directory under the category and package you're trying to build in the patches folder. Hopefully that's as clear as mud. But patch interference does happen sometimes. Also, there are some circumstances where I've successfully made a build and I wasn't exactly able to get, or it wasn't really possible for me to get the tool that was necessary for a good build with all the results that I wanted to be taken care of just from my settings files, the make.conf and all the files that are daisy chained into it in my circumstance, and in Deiger's circumstance, just the make.conf file. Now I'm going to actually look at Perl right now, because this is actually what happened in this circumstance. And basically, just to cut to the chase and get to the answer is, in my circumstance, if I have a folder called replacement files along with my patch, what I'm saying is you got to put these files inside the package source directory under the category and in the package, and replace the files that are there already with the one that I provided. Don't like that necessarily. These are probably things I would probably want to consult with the package source maintainers and get these folded in upstream. So these duplicate patches and these replacement files are all necessary for these things to build in Haiku, and ideally we just want people to download patches and settings and just roll and not have to worry about, well, do I got to replace this one, or do I have to, okay, I got to replace that one with that. There's no easy way to get them in the package source structure unless they're folded in. So let's go here to languages and Perl, and I'll say that Deiger came up with this solution. So I did a video where I was actually replacement files folder, where I was struggling with wanting to get the library X11 file into the boot home package library directory, so all the other Perl packages would build, and place the Perl header and the Haiku-ish header in places where they would be found by the system when things tried to build, and that they were, when included in each other, I don't know which one's included. I think Haiku-ish is included in the Perl header. That inclusion would also be found, and to avoid errors. Deiger came up with a solution for this. So he sent a text over with the code that would solve this to me, and I added this to the package source make file. So this would replace. So it's right here, these two lines right here. Deiger wrote these two. Credit to Deiger for that. Question is, how do I get this built in? I know this doesn't hurt anything now. I think this line was already was there. These two lines are added. I would probably want to get that into the, so it's not going to hurt anything. It's not going to hurt any of the other builds. There's a number of operating systems that use Perl. It's got an if-then Haiku. This is the kind of thing I really would hope folded in upstream. But for now, I'll keep it in my GitHub. But that's the example of a replacement file. Another example of a replacement file is a package list, and that was with Python 27. I have not tried, and I haven't disposed of my Confederate sets yet. Basically, when all's said and done, Haiku will build most of in package source the way I have it, the way Deiger has it patched, with all the settings that are in place. Python will build most of the package, but not all of the package. There was another issue that was going on. It was trying to include files that were actually optional. And it was really, basically at the end of the day, I had to make a package list with a capital H Haiku, and I'm not so sure if that overrides the comment. I really still need to experiment more with this before I even attempt to release it. But these are actually replacement files, so I need to make a new folder. So all I have Deiger Filent. Great. all I really have is the patches that Dagger made worked. So all I really have, as far as I know, they applied. So all I've really added to Dagger's stuff are these replacement files, actually. I'm still going to keep the Confederate because I'm going to still experiment with this and see if I can get some more stuff to build. Now, getting back to what I was going to say is that when Python builds, right in the middle of it, it'll say this. First of all, it'll have that, let me talk about this a bit too. It'll have that number error in it. Same phone number. When it tries to deal with SSL. What it says here is basically is that these modules didn't build because it couldn't find the necessary bits. And these modules, when it attempted to build, didn't build. And so the results for Haiku are different than the results for another OS. So it really needs a different package list. Otherwise, Pkgsrc will say, oh, can't find these files. And you never get actually a package that's built or installed. But I found that even using Python 27 in this state, it still is able to build a number of submodules. So it's better to have it work and to help build all these other things. Now, getting into this a little bit, this gets a little more complicated, but I'll go into the Pkgsrc directory, go into languages, Python 27, and unfortunately, bear with me for a second here because I don't remember exactly which one it was. It may have been A, B, or D. One of these patches actually causes Pkgsrc, because Python did not build some of the modules. And the question is, which one of it is it? I will find it, so I will. Yes, indeed, I will. Now, sometimes, again, if the patch has already been made, it's going to be, that's the patch interference that I already talked about. I don't recall whether that happened in this case. Here it is. Okay, so this is patch AM. It makes a very clear message. And it says, these modules have been disabled for a normal build because the packages are available in Pkgsrc as separate packages, basically. So looking at the message that came up, where it couldn't find the parts, this audio device here is not a problem because this patch designed it to not build actually these two here. In fact, all three of these. So this OSS audio dev, so mark with a little asterisk. Pkgsrc purposely caused these things not to build. Some of these build even though Pkgsrc didn't want them to build. Okay, SQLite 3. So really it is multiprocessing GDB. No, there's GDB. So really it is, oh, there's TK enter. Okay, that's not a problem. It may end up at all these, so I'm just not finding them. So NIS, zlib, and multiprocessing really seem to be the only three modules that failed to build because of the missing parts. The rest were purposely set aside by package source. And conceivably, I would go into some other package directory and try to build it there, and I'm going to assume they'll be successful unless I know otherwise. So this multiprocessing, the NIS and the zlib are actually problems, and so are the socket and the SSL. And when it comes to the package list, though, save this. When it comes to the package list, though, do I even have what happened? Perhaps I didn't save those. It definitely, I'm just gonna have to go by memory here. It definitely complained about where is that file? The package list definitely complained about these two and the multiprocessing. I don't recall that the package list seemed to think that NIS or zlib were missing. So what I have left really are other changes that I made and to see whether I'm going to have more success with NIS, zlib, or multiprocessing, socket or SSL, but I really don't recall. I don't recall, actually. I thought I might have solved some of those, but zlib seems to stand out, NIS seems to stand out. If I'm just going by memory, I'd have to look at some of my old videos. Those seem to stand out as ones that I never actually succeeded in building, at least in Python 27. In Python 34, I have a similar result, but a different set of modules that didn't build. And in my last setup, I had both of those built, and I would turn one on or off at various times, depending upon whether the package would fail with one on or off. Yeah, I would turn one or off to get success, basically. Okay, now let's go into a little bit of the source code of Python 27 or 278 and some of the BeOS code that was still sitting around. Hopefully I kept the work directory. And I didn't. So I guess I'll just do a bmake extract and get it in there. And there's another useful thing that I found. You can actually, if you know you're going to need to patch, there's going to be a lot of cases where I'm going to know I'm going to need to make patches for some of these packages. You can actually do bmake extract and patch in one step of the command line. And I don't trust this. And what was the magic incantation for that? It was surprisingly predictable. It was bmake extract patch. And it'll do both of those. That's library X11. That's not. I'm going to do it right here. Bmake. So if it's already extracted and patched, it won't say anything, but it just won't respond. This will take a little while. I mean, the source code's already downloaded. And then the reason why I'm extracting this, I'm going to go in and I'm going to look at, there's some notes for BeOS, and I took a crack at trying to do an equivalent thing for Haiku, but when it didn't build, I gave up and went back to the normal procedure. basically, at the end of the day for Python 27, though, I've modified the package list to accept the fact that those things didn't build. Just digressing back to what I was talking about earlier before. Let's just take a look at some of these things, and there's some interesting pieces of information that exist that let me know that the error number for the undefined symbol is nothing new or unique to Haiku. It existed back in the days of BeOS. The number was slightly different, and even Martin Brown talks about this. It'd be a miracle if I find the page, but it might be. Yeah, here it is. And this was with using the other compiler. This predates the use of GCC. There's your number, it's just a different number. Call now, 214-745-4956. That's 214-745-4956. Now, believe it or not, in case you don't believe Martin Brown, I got something else for you. Alright, so over here in Python 27, there actually was somewhere in here, after I did a grep for BeOS, I found, I believe under the miscellaneous tabs, there is the notes for BeOS and a BeOS setup /py, and that thing is not in the normal directory. Now what the notes say is if you're using BeOS, what you're going to do is actually use this setup Python setup script and not the normal one. We haven't done that at all in Haiku. Our patches address, now by my saying that, it may imply that I think that that's the reason why, in fact I don't even know if we have incomplete builds, but if we do, and you know that, you may think I know that and assume that I'm implying that because we haven't done it this way, that's why. I haven't come to that conclusion. Very convoluted and roundabout way of saying that I'm just pointing this out as a possible tool that can be used. The only reason I'm pointing this out is this is a possible approach that can be used, or if people look at this code, it may provide solutions, or it may be necessary that we use our own setup script. I'm not sure, but I'm pointing this out. But in the notes here, I'll use P, I like it better. There we go. Different phone number, 214-745-9072. That's 214-745-9072. Always seems to have the 214 area code, but this seems to, so it says that it says you have to put a read line library in what is now config non-package library. Perhaps, I mean, things have kind of changed. I don't know how well library files in that directory actually link. In my last experience, it didn't do it well, but I haven't tested it yet in this one. And this one is funny. So this error is, for some reason, the BeOS file system at the time wasn't able to handle when this was ported, not when this. I think it was ported in 2001. Wasn't able to handle files of a certain size. So basically, and it's also saying that there's no maintainer for this. And what they're saying is that copy this file here and put it into this and replace it. So whoever did this is doing the Confederate patch method, basically. So use a Confederate. He's saying use a Confederate patch here. So basically, just pave over the old file and just use the new one. So he says it needs its own configure prefix, and so this may, if someone looks at this, it may help. But also it tells me that we've inherited or continued some of the problems that existed in BeOS. And quite frankly, they're bugs, and just because the BeOS had bugs doesn't mean we have to have them too. I think we should improve upon what the BeOS had to offer. You know, if we fix some code that results in this error going away, that doesn't change the look or feel of the end user experience. It only creates, you know, preserving that kind of thing only creates problems for people that try to port apps and results in end users not having applications they want to use ported over. So if we preserve this, bad idea. Just get rid of it. We don't want to preserve the bad things. We want to improve upon the BeOS, in my opinion, because, you know, that's why we would liberate the code. Otherwise, we just use the original code. What's the point in liberating the code, making it open source, or recreating the code, I guess? We really liberated it. We recreated it. If we're not going to actually fix the problems that were there, if we just simply re-implement the errors, you know. But I'm also saying that from the standpoint of being an end user, but most importantly, that I don't know the intricacies of the coding and programming that makes up Haiku or BeOS. There may be other factors that I just don't know or understand that cause this to re-implement itself without any effort on our part. And it may or may not be possible to get rid of those errors based on the overall holistic of the OS. So keep that in mind too when I say these things. But getting back to it, Python did have the same kind of error. That may be a different approach we may want to use. At some point, someone thought it was a good idea to let's just look at this because there's a date here. So Don Cave created this on March 27, 2001. So this is 13 years old. How well that's going to translate into today's world, I don't know, but it's another approach that people want to use. They want to look at the code and see, okay, well, he's doing this, which I can't. I can't look at some, oh, yeah, he's doing this and that because of this and that. But if you can, do it because you might find some answers if you're having a problem with some of the modules building, like I am. Okay. All right, so one of the Sunland that's very important for the library X11 is to deal with those get Xtrans built in such a way that the other packages that depend on the headers and C files that it provides, that those will also fit in with library X11. If you get too far down the chain, and library X11 companion packages, there are numerous. If you get too far down the chain, you're going to regret you didn't do that in the first place. Because there'll be a lot of packages that will depend on Xtrans, and you have to uninstall all of those just to rebuild Xtrans. You want to do this early. And then I had a few builds that weren't perfect. That perfect in package sources is another subject. And I kind of did touch on this. This includes Python 27, where in my circumstances, I've created these replacement files because I wasn't able to get everything to build. And so the package list will be different. So to get a package, at least with as much that was built, I had to modify the package list such as to allow or to cause package source to package what was built and install what was built. But if you see in my repository patches with also a replacement files folder, look in it. If you see a plist folder, that means something didn't build. Now, in one circumstances, it's rather benign and common, I've come to find out. In one case, I actually handled it the proper way. and that is on the archivers that want to have a binary that will tar up files and place it on a physical tape drive that no one has these days, or most no one has these days. There's actually a number of operating systems that just won't build that, and so there are alternative package list and package source, and those replacement files, basically, I probably should want to move upstream because they provide, the package list is slimmed down for Haiku to fit in for the fact that it doesn't build all that, but it's actually incorporated in the make file. Let's look for those kind of things. Just going through the archivers here. Now see here for arc, and I haven't done this to patches. I haven't put patches in a folder called replacement files. Why? I probably should. Because I don't want people to just put this in the local patches folder. Now what you're supposed to do is, if you use my patches, just download the Git repository and place everything in Diger's local patches folders that he has provided. So you can basically copy the root of whatever the name is when you download my patches, copy the contents of that root into Diger's local patches. It won't overwrite anything. It will just add additional files and patches, but it doesn't overwrite anything. Unless I had to change one of Diger's patches. But my plan is to give those changes to Diger, but I don't remember doing that. There's another one for freeze. Also, now you have the choice though. That's probably a better way to do it. You do have a choice of simply taking my replacement patch and just paving over the one that's there in package source. But you want to make sure that you're doing it for the same version of the package that the patch is for. And the problem is that when you use local patches, there's really no version number label. That's so all you really know is that if you're using local patches and the package doesn't build, it's because the local patches were created for a different version of the same package. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to see which patches fail, look at those patches more closely, and see if you can recreate those patches for the newer package, which is a more complicated process. What I usually end up doing is I bmake extract patches. So everything gets patched. It'll tell me which ones fail. Then I'll look at those patches in the local patches directory, open up, look at the file it's trying to patch. If there isn't a .arig file, create a copy and call it .arig, same name .arig, and then modify the file with the original file that was there such that it includes the changes that were in that patch. Then once I'm done with all those files that I've modified that have a companion.arig, is use the mkpatches command while inside the directory. And then if you dig down into the package source directory, into the package folder, there's a patch folder. You look at it, there'll be two sets of patches, the latest patch and a .arig, and on the ones you've made, it should have a zero size .arig. If it doesn't, that means you've enhanced a patch that already existed. And I delete the .arigs, and I set aside for inclusion in Git the ones that I've made or changed. But that's the way you go about it. But before those patches will even apply, there's one other step. It's bmake space make patch sum, still wire inside the package directory, And then everything should go fine from that stage. Just make sure you delete the patches that are labeled .rig in the patches folder before you do that, and also save what you've made. Look at all the patches. There's a lot of them. There's only a few. Well, okay. The older ones, you have to look at the older ones. The newer ones actually have, their name is similar to the file that you edited. So if it says patch configure, that means, you know, you edited the configure file. You know that your changes landed in patch configure, But if you see that, hey, what I made changes to this other file over here, but it's not showing up in a file down here that's named, that means it's part of one of the older patches, and you've enhanced one of the package source patches, and you just want to look and find out which one it was. And sometimes there are whole sets of 10, 20 of these patch AA, patch AB, patch BA, patch BB. But you got to look and find out which ones those were and set those aside if you want other people to use them. Of course, you should, but okay. So, of the builds that were not perfect in my circumstances, are the ones that are going to be marked with, here's another replacement patch. So I got to look through this. So it's kind of like a mess, not being inside the machinery of package source, to have me having not taken the time to find out who to send these replacement patches to and or patches to and get them upstream creates a lot of more complexity. Once these get in there, I don't have to worry about, well, this one's one that's enhanced, and this one to go in the local patches directory. This one you got to replace it with. Eventually, I want to get to the point where I have all these ifs, thens, buts, or what ifs, and all that stuff. Trying to find this GCPIO is one of the packages. And this is the this is a replacement file here. And as I figure out what I'm going to do, then I start following that pattern. So now I'm going to start following the pattern. So these replacement files, I'm really going to want to submit probably to Keiko Obata. These are new ones, as far as I can tell. But where it has the P list, I've removed the one package that tries to use the tape drive that won't build from the package list. Now there is a way to deal with it, but it still modifies the way the package list works. For star, I provided the source code with the hard links removed from it for the same version that package source uses. So that I put that up at Git. So all you'd have to do is place this into the dist files directory to use it. Now, I do happen to know that these ones that are labeled patch AB, with a couple letters, are really files that I've enhanced, patches that I've enhanced that already existed in package source. Some of these down here might actually be enhancements, because as of I don't know how long ago, package source started using patches. Started naming their patches descriptively, so when you look at the name of the file, you can tell what's being patched. There may be that this patch BeOS makefile or Unix or unzip or whatever is actually a replacement patch, but I just don't know if I'd have to actually go in and look in the package source directory, and I haven't done that yet, but I'm putting what I do know actually fits. Is a replacement patch in the replacement patch folder. All that means is I'm patching the same file that someone else did for some other operating system, but I'm doing it for Haiku. How this relates to Haiku Porter, a patch is a patch. Package list and a recipe file from the package source calls the recipe files make files. The make file in a package list really has no impact on Haiku Porter, but the settings would. So if you look at my status sheet and it says, oh, this archiver built. You look at my patches and there's no patch, but you know it isn't built in Haiku Porter. The answer is that I have some setting that I've also provided in my GitHub, but it's under the Confederate patches. No, I think I moved it actually. Under etc. package source, under either the global or the package category, I have a setting somewhere in here that causes the package to build where it otherwise wouldn't. I went over a lot of these, and I may have only added a few additional things since I went over it last time, if at all. But you can also look at these settings, and if you really insist on wanting to patch, whatever, I'm using settings to do a passive patch, as I'll call it. You can get a clue as to what needs to be done. So, say NetIO isn't building for you, and I don't have a patch for that. You're not sure what the answer is. If you look at, and as a side note, I'm probably gonna get these changed. I'm probably gonna change the way I do this, so it's by package. And each one of these settings files will be in a category. So it'll be a huge daisy chain. Eventually, I think I'm going to do it that way rather than by the tool used to solve the problem. I'm going to do it by the package. But nonetheless, you can look and say, oh, he's injecting library network into that. Okay, so I just need to somehow add library network to the process. When you're doing your stuff, if you're trying to get something ported over using Haiku Porter. So I think I've gone over everything I wanted to go over. I haven't updated this. I probably won't update the repo until later. Right now what my approach is I'm going to try to do all these patches first. I'm not really doing categories because I know I'm going to get a lot of failures that would otherwise build if I just finish this whole process of getting through all these different setting changes and or patches folded into my system in such a way that either placing the patch in the patch directory or local patches causes it to build, or having the settings that I use causes it to build, or a combination thereof. So that's the circumstances. And again, my overall goals that I went over the other day is to rebuild everything I did before to make sure nothing's lost, but with the added benefit of now having identified patches and identified settings for specific packages set up. So people could look at these things and either use the patch or look at the settings and use it as a reference, and or decide to incorporate the setting into the ability to use the setting into their tool set as a reference, or a combination of both those things, either patch or, so it'd be more useful to other people rather than, oh, it just built, oh, it just built, but the reason why it built over here and not in your place because of one of these things. I want to get it more narrowed down and more specific. I want to keep caught up, and I want to have to a point where I know that pretty much automatically, in a fairly recent version of Haiku Nightly, that the recent version of package source is going to rebuild everything I built before. And then once I get into the stable situation like that, it's like, oh yeah, this is going to work. If I download this nightly, I know for sure, download this nightly, or it's 95% sure unless something changed in the OS. So if I download this nightly and I download package source, and I just use these local patches, or, you know, I'm going to have, without doing anything, I'm going to have a build of 4,800 packages like I had before. I'm going to get to that stage. Once I get to that stage, I'm going to then, I have two goals in mind. I'm going to decide where I'm going to go. Depending on how skilled I am and able to take on getting more, as time goes by, I'll learn more. Getting more packages into the overall build set that are major, like the compile stoppers. If I'm unable to solve the compile stoppers, then I'll start making, or try to learn, it shouldn't be impossible, a recipe for Haiku Porter and patches for each one of these things, or just recipes if there are no patches required, and start adding those. Haiku Porter. Maybe I'll want to keep, package source, able to do its thing and work its way, get them even. And once I get both those even, then it'll just be a process of me trying to see if I can get anything built or start on things that are compile stoppers. And hopefully, over time, we'll get to the top here. In the meantime, I got to deal with the state of flux. I have to be able to communicate to Diger what I'm doing, coordinate with Diger, coordinate with the package source people, try to get as much of my things actually folded into package source so I have less things to keep track of, more automatic success, and that's it. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to be probably try to do a little more work maybe tomorrow. If not, it'll be another week or here and there once in a while during the week when I come up with some new stuff. I'm not going to release anything at GitHub right yet because I'm kind of a little bit late doing something else that I have to do. But probably within the next week, I'll have at least all my new settings up and the patches that I've gotten through so far, which gets through the biology category. And of course, that's alphabetical. All the way down to X11. There are actually only 39 categories, of which 3 I've finished doing patches and or settings and or package list and or package list make files for. And I'm going to try to get these things all folded in so it'll be as automatic as possible. But the extent that I don't have success, I'll probably bitch about it here and keep going, keep maintaining locally and updating the GitHub for the things that are useful and can be used but aren't just in package source, because at the end of the day the goal is to have all the patches just be part of package source. So when someone downloads package source, the settings will just work for Haiku, the makefile will just work for Haiku, the patches will just apply for Haiku. We're not maintaining this in some other place, but it actually just works. That's the goal. Okay, that's it.